Welcome, dear reader, to a journey into one of modern horror's most unsettling masterpieces. What you're about to explore isn't merely a film review, it's an excavation of terror itself. A psychological autopsy of Jennifer Kent's The Babadook. This isn't your typical monster story. No, this is something far more insidious. Something that crawls beneath your skin and makes a home in the spaces between your heartbeats. This is about the monsters we create from our own pain, the shadows that grow fat on our unshed tears, and the unbearable weight of grief that can transform a mother into something unrecognizable, so dim the light. Lock your doors and prepare to confront the creature that lives in the basement of the human psyche. The House of Mourning Hour story begins in a place of profound darkness, not the physical kind. Though there's plenty of that to come, but the existential void left by sudden, violent loss. Amelia is a woman suspended in amber, trapped in the worst moment of her life, unable to move forward or back. 7 years ago, her world fractured irreparably. Her husband Oscar died in a car accident while rushing her to the hospital to give birth to their son, Samuel. In that single, catastrophic moment, joy and devastation became inextricably fused. Every birthday candle Samuel blows out is a reminder of the life extinguished. Every milestone he reaches is shadowed by the father who will never witness it. This is the toxic soil from which our monster will grow. Amelia exists in a state of perpetual exhaustion. Her eyes hollow and haunted, her body moving through the motions of motherhood like a ghost performing its eternal routine. She works at a nursing home, surrounded by death and decay, as if she can't escape the shadow of mortality even in her professional life. Her sister Claire has moved on, living in a bright, clean house with a perfect daughter, treating Amelia's struggles with well-meaning but ultimately useless platitudes. The world has continued spinning while Amelia remains stuck, drowning in quicksand while everyone else walks past on solid ground. And Samuel, poor Samuel, is a child forged in trauma, born into grief, never knowing a moment when his mother wasn't fractured. He's hyperactive, obsessed with weapons he builds to protect his mother from monsters he insists are real. Other children avoid him. Teachers complain about him. His behavior grows more erratic, more disturbing. He sees what others don't, or perhaps he simply sees what his mother refuses to acknowledge. The monsters are real. They've always been real. They're just not where everyone is looking. The house itself becomes a character, manifestation of their shared psychosis. It's rendered in washed-out blues and greys, the color slowly bleeding from their world, like life draining from a wound. The walls seem to close in. Shadows pool in corners where they shouldn't exist. The architecture becomes oppressive, claustrophobic, a physical representation of Amelia's constricting mental state. This isn't a home. It's a mausoleum where two people are buried alive. The Book of Nightmares. Then comes the catalyst, delivered with the innocent casualness that precedes all true horror. A book on Samuel's shelf that neither of them remembers acquiring. Mr. Babadook, a title that sounds almost playful, almost whimsical, until you open it and confront the darkness within. The book itself is a work of malevolent artistry. Its pop-up pages unfold with mechanical precision, revealing a figure that shouldn't exist, a tall, impossibly thin creature dressed in a black coat and top hat, its fingers extending into claws. Its face a pale smear with teeth that multiply with each viewing. The rhymes are simple, childlike, but they carry the weight of prophecy. If it's in a word, or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. This isn't a warning. It's a diagnosis. What makes this sequence so deeply unsettling is its violation of the sacred. Bedtime stories are supposed to be safe, a ritual of comfort and bonding between parent and child. But this book transforms that sanctuary into a hunting ground. As Amelia reads aloud, her voice growing more strained with each page, we watch the corruption of innocence in real time. The illustrations become more violent, more graphic. The creature promises not just fear, but possession. I'll soon take off my funny disguise, and once you see what's underneath, you're going to wish you were dead. Samuel's reaction is primal terror. But Amelia's, hers is something more complex and more chilling a recognition. Some part of her, buried deep beneath layers of denial and exhaustion, knows this creature, has always known it. The Babadook isn't introducing itself, it's revealing itself. She tears the book apart in a frenzy, ripping pages, destroying the images, as if by dismembering the medium she can kill the message. She burns the pieces in the fireplace, watching them curl and blacken and turn to ash. But you can't burn away grief. You can't tear up trauma. That's the terrible truth the film understands with such devastating clarity, that manifestation, the hauntings begin subtle and escalate with nightmare logic. A knock at the door, no one there. A voice on the phone, just static and breathing. Shadows that move independently of light sources. The television flickering to life at 3 a.m, showing impossible images. Old silent films featuring the Babadook itself, as if the creature has retroactively inserted itself into the historical record. Kent's direction during these sequences is masterful in its restraint. We see so little of the Babadook directly. It's a blur of motion at the edge of the frame, a silhouette that disappears when you look at it head-on. The suggestion of something standing in the doorway, watching from the darkness. This ambiguity serves a crucial purpose. The less defined the creature is, the more our own fears fill in the blanks. The Babadook becomes personalized, a unique horror for each viewer based on their own unacknowledged demons. Sound design becomes a weapon. The film assaults us with audio horror, the scrape of fingernails on wood, the creaking of floorboards under impossible weight, and most terrifyingly, the Babadook's voice, a throat-destroying growl that sounds like vocal cords being shredded, like something trying to form human words with an inhuman mouth. It's a voice that bypasses the conscious mind and speaks directly to our primal fear centers. Amelia's skepticism crumbles. She calls the police, they find nothing. She tries to convince herself it's stress, exhaustion, the product of too many sleepless nights. But the evidence multiplies. The book returns, reassembled on her doorstep with new pages, new prophecies. These additions are even more disturbing. Crude illustrations showing Amelia, herself committing violence against Samuel and their dog. Bugsy, the message is clear and unforgivable. The call is coming from inside the house. The possession what follows is one of cinema's most harrowing depictions of psychological breakdown. Amelia begins to deteriorate before our eyes, and Essie Davis's performance becomes almost unwatchable in its raw intensity. She stops sleeping entirely, her eyes becoming hollow pits ringed with bruised dark circles. Her movements turn jerky, puppet-like, as if invisible strings are pulling her through scenes. Her hygiene collapses, hair unwashed, clothes unchanged. The basic maintenance of personhood abandoned. More disturbing is the transformation of her personality. The exhausted but loving mother gives way to something else, something cruel. She snaps at Samuel with vicious precision, targeting his vulnerabilities with the intimate knowledge only a parent possesses. she kills Bugsy, the family dog, in a scene the film mercifully keeps off-screen but makes horrifically clear. The look in her eyes afterward, satisfied, not quite human, is more frightening than any jump scare. The Babadook's voice begins emerging from her own throat. At first, it's subtle, a slight deepening of her tone, a growl underlying her words. But it escalates. She speaks in that impossible voice, that chest-deep rumble that no human vocal cords should produce. She moves with inhuman speed and strength. Her face contorts into expressions of rage and hunger that transform her, features into a mask of malevolence. This is the film's boldest move, making the mother the monster. Horror has long used maternal figures as sources of comfort and safety, the ultimate protector against the darkness. By corrupting this archetype, the Babadook taps into one of childhood's deepest fears. What if the person meant to protect you becomes the threat? What if there's nowhere safe to run? The house darkens further, as if the physical structure is responding to Amelia's internal state. Lights flicker and die. Colors drain away until everything exists in shades of black and gray. The walls seem to breathe, expanding and contracting with malevolent life. Reality itself becomes unstable, fluid. As the boundary between Amelia's psyche and the external world dissolves, the confrontation, despite his youth and terror, understands what the adults in his life refuse to acknowledge. His mother is sick, possessed by something that's been living inside her all along. In the film's most emotionally devastating sequence, he doesn't flee or fight. Instead, he performs an act of desperate love. He restrains his own mother, tying her to the bed, not to hurt her, but to save her from herself. "I know you don't love me," he tells her, tears streaming down his face. "But I love you, Mum." This declaration becomes the key that unlocks Amelia's prison. Through the possession, through the Babadook's control, some essential part of her hears her son's words, sees his courage, recognizes the love she's been too buried in grief to fully express. And in that recognition, she finds something the creature cannot possess: her will to fight. What follows isn't a traditional exorcism or battle. There's no priest with holy water, no mystical incantation, no convenient weakness for the monster to exploit. Instead, Amelia draws on the same maternal ferocity that the Babadook has been corrupting. She screams not with fear, but with rage. Pure, primal, cleansing rage. She screams at the creature to get out, to leave her son alone, to take its darkness and its torment and release its hold on her body. "You are trespassing in my house," she roars, her voice her own again, strong and terrible and righteous. The Babadook retreats not defeated, but repelled. It pulls away from her, that shadowy mass of grief and trauma coalescing into its distinct form, and she drives it backward, step by step, down the hallway, down the stairs, through the doorway, and finally into the basement. The door slams shut. The lock clicks home. And for the first time in 7 years, Amelia breathes freely. The basement, but here's where the Babadook transcends typical horror and becomes something more profound, more honest, and ultimately more hopeful. The creature isn't destroyed. The grief isn't magically cured. The trauma doesn't evaporate in the light of confrontation. Instead, something more difficult and more realistic occurs: containment and acceptance. The film's epilogue takes place weeks or months later. Samuel is celebrating his birthday, a day that was previously poisoned by association with his father's death. But now, it's just a birthday. There's cake and presents and genuine smiles. The house is brighter, warmer, as if someone has opened windows that have been sealed shut for years. Color has returned to their world, but Amelia has a daily ritual now. She goes down to the basement with a bowl containing worms, disgustingly alive and writhing, and she opens the door. Just a crack. The Babadook is there. We hear it growling, sense it moving in the darkness. But it's not loose. It's not hunting. It's simply ... there, existing, present, but no longer in control. She sets down the bowl, speaking to the creature, not with fear or hatred, but with a kind of firm acknowledgement. She's feeding it, tending to it, giving it what it needs to survive without letting it consume her life. She closes the door, locks it again, returns upstairs to her son and their brighter, healing world. This ending is radical in its implications. Mental health, the film suggests, isn't about conquering your demons or vanquishing your trauma. It's about integration. It's about acknowledging that grief and pain and the darkest parts of yourself are permanent residents of your psyche. You can't evict them. You can't kill them. But you can establish boundaries. You can refuse to let them occupy every room of your house. You can feed them what they need: acknowledgement, attention, care, without letting them sit at the dinner table or sleep in your bed. The monster within, so what is the Babadook, really? It's not a creature from folklore or urban legend. It's not a demon summoned by dark ritual or ancient curse. The Babadook is a manifestation of unprocessed grief. Yes, but more specifically, it's the violence that grief can do when we refuse to face it. It's the rage at a senseless death, the guilt over secret resentments, the exhaustion of single parenthood, the isolation of loss, the resentment toward a child who serves as a living reminder of what was taken away. Think about the timing. Samuel was born on the exact day Oscar died. Every year, Amelia is forced to celebrate one while mourning the other, unable to fully commit to either emotion. How can she celebrate Samuel's life without feeling guilty about Oscar's death? How can she mourn her husband without resenting the son whose birth precipitated the fatal car ride? These contradictory feelings, never expressed, never processed, have been fermenting for 7 years, growing stronger and more toxic. The Babadook is also the fear that we might not love our children enough or in the right way, that we might damage them irreparably through our own brokenness, that we might become the threat we're supposed to protect them from. These are the unspeakable fears of parenthood, especially single parenthood, especially parenthood born from tragedy. The film has the courage to drag these fears into the light and force us to look at them. The art of fear from a purely technical standpoint. The Babadook is a masterclass in atmospheric horror. Kent uses practical effects and minimal CGI, giving the creature a tangible physical presence that digital monsters often lack. The cinematography by Babadook uses deep shadows and stark contrasts, creating a visual language where darkness has weight and substance. The production design transforms the house into a character itself. Notice how the wallpaper patterns seem to shift and writhe in peripheral vision. How doors frame characters like coffins. How mirrors and reflections multiply and distort. The space becomes psychologically active, responding to and amplifying Amelia's mental state. Essie Davis delivers a fearless, devastating performance, unafraid to make herself ugly, unsympathetic, terrifying. She doesn't ask for our pity or approval. She simply shows us the truth of her character's disintegration and reconstruction. Young Noah Wiseman matches her intensity, creating a Samuel who's annoying and sympathetic in equal measure, exactly as a real troubled child would be. The legacy of trauma. Babadook understands something profound about trauma and mental illness. They're not external invaders that can be expelled and forgotten. They're part of us, woven into our neural pathways, embedded in our memories, shaping our responses and reactions in ways we don't always recognize. The task isn't eradication, but integration, learning to live with our damage without being controlled by it. This is why the film's ending resonates so powerfully. There's no magical cure, no complete healing, no return to a pre-trauma innocence. Instead, there's management. There's survival. There's the daily work of keeping the darkness in the basement where it belongs. Some days are easier than others. Some days, the growling is louder, but the door stays locked, and life continues upstairs in the light. The film also explores how trauma is inherited. Samuel never knew his father, but he's been shaped by the grief shadow cast by that loss. Children absorb their parents' unprocessed emotions like second-hand smoke, invisible but damaging. By finally confronting her, Babadook, Amelia breaks this cycle, allowing Samuel to have a childhood not entirely defined by tragedy. Conclusion: living with monsters, The Babadook succeeds as both a genuinely frightening horror film and as a profound meditation on grief, depression, and the difficulty of facing our darkest selves. It doesn't offer easy answers or comfortable resolutions. Instead, it presents a more challenging and ultimately more hopeful message. You can survive. You can coexist with your pain. You can establish boundaries with your demons and reclaim your life without pretending the demons never existed. The Babadook remains in the basement, hungry and growling, a permanent resident of Amelia's psychological architecture. But it no longer controls her. It no longer possesses her. It's been named, confronted, and contained. And in that containment, there's liberation. This is horror that matters. Horror that means something beyond cheap scares and empty spectacle. It's horror that uses the genre's tools: monsters, hauntings, possession, to explore genuine human suffering and resilience. It reminds us that sometimes the most frightening thing isn't what's hiding under the bed or lurking in the closet. It's what's hiding inside us, waiting for a moment of weakness to emerge. You can't get rid of the Babadook, but you can learn to live with it. And in that learning, in that daily practice of facing the basement door with courage and a bowl of worms, there's hope. Not for a perfect life, not for an absence of pain, but for something more realistic and more precious. A life where the monsters don't win, where love survives alongside loss, where the house stays bright even when darkness lives below. That's the true genius of Jennifer Kent's film. It doesn't pretend the monster dies. It just shows us how to keep living anyway. And isn't that the most terrifying and most beautiful truth of all?